A little girl helps a busy CEO pick up scattered papers, but when he sees the bracelet on her tiny wrist, he realizes she might be his daughter, and the love he lost could be closer than he ever imagined. Don't miss this powerful story of secrets, second chances, and a family finding their way back together. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story, it's a deeply human journey about loss, resilience, and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances, in the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now, let's begin. Have you ever thought a simple act of kindness could crack open the secrets you spent a lifetime trying to bury? On a bright, breezy morning in San Francisco's Union Square, Olivia Bennett strode purposefully across the wide plaza, her heels clicking against the stone, the scent of roasted coffee and blooming cherry trees filling the air. She was a woman known for her steely confidence, a CEO who had clawed her way up from nothing. But none of her boardroom victories prepared her for the moment when the wind picked up and sent a folder of critical merger documents swirling into the air like startled white birds. As papers skittered across the square, Olivia dropped to her knees, cursing under her breath, aware of curious eyes from tourists and street performers. She reached for the closest page, an NDA worth millions, only to find a tiny hand clutching it first. Her eyes darted up, locking onto the wide, earnest gaze of a little girl, with hair the color of chestnuts and eyes like polished jade. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, yet she was carefully stacking papers with surprising seriousness, her small knees pressing into the cold stone as she worked. "Are these yours?" the girl asked softly, holding the crumpled pages toward Olivia. Her voice was light innocent, but it struck Olivia with the force of a hurricane. Because as the sunlight glinted across the girl's wrist, something familiar caught her eye. A delicate gold bracelet dangling loosely from the child's hand. A bracelet she recognized instantly. The bracelet she had given to Ethan, the man who had once been her everything. The man she'd walked away from 6 years ago, when ambition whispered louder than love. A rush of blood pounded in Olivia's ears. The sounds of Union Square, the cable car bell, the street musician's guitar. The distant horns faded into a muffled roar as her gaze fixed on the charm hanging from the bracelet. It was a small, ornate heart etched with a pattern. Only she and Ethan had known a secret gift exchanged in the soft glow of a candlelit night when they thought they'd never lose each other. She tried to breathe, but it felt like all the air had been sucked from the world. Her voice trembled as she forced words past the lump in her throat. Where did you get that bracelet?" she asked, eyes darting from the child's wrist to her innocent face. The girl tilted her head as if puzzled by the intensity of the question, then lifted her arm with a proud little grin. "My daddy gave it to me," she replied. "He said it was Mommy's favorite before she went away." Olivia nearly dropped the papers still clutched in her hands. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Union Square, spinning like a carousel of memories she had locked away long ago. She thought she'd buried Ethan in the past, along with the pain of the choices they both made. Yet here, in the open square, on a perfectly ordinary day, the past stood before her, in the form of a tiny girl with Ethan's eyes, and the bracelet that once symbolized a love she thought had died. A street performer strummed a haunting tune a few feet away, the melancholic notes floating over them like a soundtrack to Olivia's unraveling heart. She saw not just the bracelet, but Ethan's face behind it, the nights spent dreaming together on a mattress in their first cramped apartment, the promises whispered in the dark. And she remembered the morning she'd walked out convinced that climbing higher in her career meant letting go of the man who adored her. She told herself it was the right thing, that love could wait. Now, she wasn't so sure. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes as the little girl looked up at her, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. How could a child so small carry a symbol of something so massive, so broken? How could one unexpected encounter in Union Square shatter the careful fortress Olivia had spent years building around her heart? This moment was more than a random meeting. It was a reckoning. A chance for Olivia to face the echoes of every late-night regret and every silent moment she'd wondered what if. And for anyone who has ever looked back on a decision and felt the crushing weight of missed chances, Olivia's story is a reminder that no matter how far we run, the past can find us when we least expect it. As the girl's father stepped out from a nearby cafe, his silhouette framed by the morning sun, Olivia's breath caught. She recognized the familiar curve of his shoulders, the way he turned his head, scanning the square. It was Ethan. After 6 years, they were only a few yards apart, yet the chasm of silence and lost time yawned like the Grand Canyon between them. She watched him stride toward them, unaware of her presence. Every instinct told her to run. But something stronger rooted her to the spot, the knowledge that this meeting was not chance. It was the beginning of a story long overdue to be told. And if she walked away now, she might lose the only chance to find the answers that had haunted her every sleepless night. Because in that single moment, Olivia understood something most people learn. Too late, life's most important moments don't come with warning signs or second takes. They arrive quietly, wrapped in unexpected encounters and fragile hope. And whether we're ready or not, they demand a choice. As Ethan approached, the crisp spring air around Union Square seemed to still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. What would Olivia do next? Would she step forward into the tangle of regret and possibility, or would she cling to the safety of the life she had built alone? Join me in the next part as we see what happens when Olivia finally faces the man and the love she thought she had left behind forever. Olivia's heart thundered as Ethan stepped out of the cafe, scanning the square for his daughter. The sun caught his face, bringing him into full view, and time seemed to collapse around Olivia. He looked older, wearier, but his eyes still carried the same quiet intensity she remembered from those years ago. She stood, frozen, clutching the papers Lily had gathered, unable to move, as the man she thought she'd lost forever drew closer with each step. Ethan called out Lily. His voice cracked with concern, and the girl turned, waving with the unfiltered joy only a child could summon. Olivia watched him scoop Lily into his arms, hugging her so tightly it was clear he lived every day for her. She felt a raw ache in her chest. The Ethan she had known was reckless with dreams and quick to laugh. But this Ethan carried a gravity she couldn't recognize, a man who had weathered storms she had never seen. He finally noticed her. His eyes widened, the color draining from his face as recognition hit. "Olivia?" He whispered the word, nearly lost in the hum of the city. A silence fell between them, so thick it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. For a moment, they simply stared. It was as if all the noise of the cafe spilling out behind him, the barista calling names, the hiss of the espresso machine faded into a muted haze. I didn't think I'd ever see you again," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. Olivia struggled to respond, the words caught behind the years of anger, heartbreak, and questions she had buried. She glanced at Lily, whose eyes darted curiously between them, innocent and unaware of the history crackling in the space between her parents. They moved inside the cafe, a cozy corner spot tucked away from the bustle of North Beach's busy sidewalks. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint strains of an old Ella Fitzgerald tune floating from hidden speakers. Olivia sat across from Ethan at a small wooden table, worn by countless stories before theirs. The moment felt both intimate and impossibly foreign, like stepping back into a dream you didn't know you still had. Ethan reached across the table, his hand trembling as he pushed a stray paper back toward Olivia. His eyes, tired but open, searched hers for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding. "You look incredible," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. Olivia fought back tears. "You look different," she replied honestly. The lines on his face told a story of nights spent worrying, of sacrifices made, and of resilience. She had always admired his kindness, but now she could see a strength in him that had been forged through years of hardship. "I tried to find you," Ethan said suddenly, his voice low, almost ashamed. "After you left, I tried so many times. But your number changed, and when I went to your old apartment it was empty. I didn't know where you'd gone." His words spilled out like a confession long overdue. She looked at him sharply, a mix of disbelief and heartache in her eyes. "I thought you'd moved on without a word," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought I wasn't enough for you." Ethan shook his head, eyes glistening. "You were always enough, Olivia. I left because I was drowning. My father's debts came crashing down after he passed, and I didn't want to drag you into that mess. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought letting you go was the only way to set you free." A hush fell over the table as Olivia processed his words. All the nights she spent convincing herself he'd stopped loving her suddenly felt like a cruel trick played by time and circumstance. She remembered the birthday she spent alone, the promotion she'd celebrated with colleagues instead of him, the holidays that echoed with silence where laughter used to live. The enormity of those missed years pressed down on her chest until it hurt to breathe. Lily, coloring quietly with crayons the barista had given her, glanced up at them. "Are you friends?" she asked, her wide eyes blinking with innocent curiosity. The question hung in the air like a lifeline and a dagger all at once. Olivia forced a smile, tears threatening to spill. "We're old friends," she managed. Ethan looked away, his jaw tightening. His hand reached for Lily's, resting protectively over her small fingers. The sight made Olivia's heart twist, a pang of regret piercing deeper than she expected. She realized how much she had missed not just Ethan, but the years she could have watched him become this devoted father, the milestones she could have shared if only things had been different. The cafe felt like a small world of its own, cut off from time as they talked quietly, sharing pieces of the lives they'd built apart. Olivia described her climb in the corporate world, the nights spent alone in luxury hotels, the empty victories that felt hollow without someone to share them with. Ethan told her about working 2 jobs, learning to braid Lily's hair before school, and the fear that he was never doing enough. Each word peeled back a layer of bitterness, revealing old wounds still tender and new respect for what they had both endured. A lesson sat quietly between their words, that sometimes what we think is a failure is just life's way of teaching us how much we're capable of surviving, and that love doesn't always fade. Sometimes it waits in the shadows, patient and undiminished. As they sat in the soft morning light filtering through the cafe windows, Olivia realized something important, even though time and pain had changed them both. The connection they once had still pulsed beneath the scars. But could they find a way back, or had too many years slipped away? Outside, the city buzzed with life, but in that quiet corner of North Beach, 2 hearts hovered between the ache of yesterday and the fragile hope of tomorrow. The morning light in the cafe grew warmer, as Olivia and Ethan sat in the small booth, words pouring out between them like a flood breaking through a dam. Each revelation unraveled another layer of the tangled years that had kept them apart. Olivia pulled from her purse a delicate notebook, her old journal filled with pages of letters she'd written, but never sent, confessions she had tucked away, instead of mailing because pride always won over vulnerability. She slid it across the table to Ethan, her hand trembling. He opened the worn cover with a reverence that made Olivia's chest tighten. His eyes moved over her words, absorbing every line, apologies, memories, the quiet agony of nights spent alone. Tears welled as he realized how many times she had tried to reach him in her own way, even if she could never bring herself to send the words. All this time. Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. You were hurting too. Olivia's throat constricted. I thought you'd stopped caring. She admitted, her voice low, almost ashamed. I thought if I just focused on work, on climbing higher, I could forget how much it hurt. Her confession hovered between them like something fragile and raw, catching the sunlight filtering through the cafe windows. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small bundle of letters, edges frayed and postmarks faded. He spread them on the table. I wrote you too, he said, voice trembling, so many times. But each time they were sent back, address unknown. I kept every single one, Olivia. I couldn't throw them away. The sight of his letters, each one a testament to years spent longing, snapped something deep inside her. She saw the truth. They hadn't abandoned each other. They'd been trapped by misunderstandings, bad timing, and a world that kept them apart even when they tried to find each other. The realization settled over them with a bittersweet weight, a mixture of relief and fresh sorrow. Their conversation drifted into hushed stories of the years between. Ethan told her how Lily's first steps were wobbly, but determined, how she clapped for herself after every stumble. He remembered her first day of preschool, how she had cried until he read her favorite bedtime story, on the steps of the school entrance, strangers walking past offering sympathetic smiles. Each anecdote was a glimpse into a life Olivia had missed, one that could have been shared had fate been kinder. Olivia spoke of sleepless nights in hotel rooms with sprawling city views that felt like gilded cages, promotions that should have felt triumphant, but only highlighted the emptiness of her victories. She described how she had once watched a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders at a 4th of July parade, how that single moment cracked her armor so badly she nearly booked a flight back to San Francisco, but fear of rejection held her back. As they shared these stories, a quiet truth settled between them. Love had never truly left either of their hearts, but misunderstandings and pride had built walls so tall they'd spent years wandering separate paths in the dark. Ethan's eyes shone with regret as he said softly, I spent so long convincing myself you were better off without me. I didn't want Lily to grow up in chaos, but I see now I should have fought harder. A lesson began to take shape in Olivia's mind, one she knew many, watching this story, could relate to. Life is often more about persistence than perfection. That love to last must be fought for even when it feels hopeless. She thought about how many people go through decades of silence, letting misunderstandings fester because of fear or stubbornness. She knew now the cost of letting pride win. Their conversation was interrupted when Lily looked up from her drawing and asked innocently, "Why are you both sad?" Her words cut through the heaviness like a bell tolling in a silent church. Olivia reached across the table, taking Ethan's hand without thinking. "We're just remembering things, sweetie," she said, voice trembling but warm. It was in that quiet moment the three of them gathered around the small cafe table that Olivia realized healing wasn't a matter of fixing everything at once. It was about starting with small truths, letting wounds breathe in the open air, and sharing the stories that had been buried too long. She could feel the years of resentment, misunderstanding, and regret beginning to soften at the edges, replaced by something like fragile hope. The cafe's door swung open with a gust of spring air, and a man stepped in, Marcus, an old acquaintance of Ethan's, who recognized Olivia immediately. His eyes narrowed as he spotted them together. Pulling up a chair, uninvited, he leaned in, his tone oily and patronizing. "Well, isn't this cozy?" he drawled. "I didn't expect to see you two catching up. Olivia, you know you deserve better than a man who ran off, don't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened, and Olivia felt her stomach twist at Marcus's words. The tension in the cafe thickened instantly. Lily watched the adults with wide, worried eyes, sensing the sudden shift in the air. Olivia spoke firmly, her voice unwavering. "Marcus, this isn't your business." But Marcus smirked clearly, relishing the discomfort he had stirred. His presence added a sharp edge to the fragile peace that had just begun to form. Olivia and Ethan exchanged a look, one that spoke of unspoken promises, shared pain, and a mutual determination not to let old mistakes and new meddling destroy what they might rebuild. The confrontation with Marcus was a reminder that the world wouldn't easily accept their reunion. There would be obstacles, judgments, and old wounds that refused to close overnight. But Olivia felt something unexpected in her chest, a flicker of courage stronger than fear. She looked at Ethan, squeezing his hand gently, and knew that, for the first time in years, they were finally seeing each other clearly, without the fog of pride and hurt. Outside the cafe window, the sun dipped lower over the hills of San Francisco, casting the city in a golden light that seemed to promise that even after the longest night's dawn could come again. The spring sky over San Francisco had shifted by the time Olivia, Ethan, and Lily left the cafe. Clouds gathered above the city's rolling hills, casting soft shadows across the sidewalks as they made their way to Golden Gate Park. They had decided to spend the afternoon together, hopeful that the simple act of sharing time might ease the tension that still hung heavy after Marcus's meddling words. Olivia found herself walking close to Ethan, their shoulders brushing occasionally, sending electric reminders of a bond that had never truly broken. Lily ran ahead on the path winding through the park, her laughter floating back like a bright melody. She paused to chase a yellow balloon caught in a gust of wind, her hair whipping wildly around her face. Olivia watched her heart swelling with a love she never imagined she could feel for a child who wasn't even hers by blood, but was hers in every way that mattered. Ethan noticed Olivia's gaze, and their eyes met both of them silently, acknowledging the depth of what had already grown between them since their reunion. Then it happened. In a single heart-stopping moment, Lily darted into the path of a cyclist speeding downhill. Olivia screamed her name, but time felt like it slowed her feet stuck in place as terror rooted her to the spot. Ethan lunged forward, eyes wide with horror, but it was Olivia who reached Lily first, sweeping her up into her arms just as the bike careened past, missing them by inches. The cyclist shouted in frustration the words "lost" in the roar of blood pounding in Olivia's ears. Olivia sank to the ground, clutching Lily against her chest, shaking with adrenaline and fear. "You're okay, sweetheart. You're okay," she whispered over and over, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her face. Ethan dropped to his knees beside them, his hand trembling as he brushed Lily's hair back, his own eyes shining with tears. The three of them huddled together on the grassy path, the world blurring around them in a haze of relief and overwhelming emotion. A group of passers-by stopped, offering worried glances and kind words. One older woman placed a gentle hand on Olivia's shoulder, murmuring, "That little girl's lucky to have someone who loves her so fiercely." The words burrowed deep into Olivia's heart, anchoring her to the moment and everything it meant. She realized then that love wasn't always a quiet, tender thing. Sometimes it was messy, terrifying, and demanded you risk everything to protect it. Ethan's voice was ragged when he finally spoke. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, his hand resting over Olivia's. "You saved her." Olivia shook her head, still trying to catch her breath. "We saved her," she corrected, her eyes locking onto his with a fierceness that startled them both. In that look, they shared a truth neither of them could deny. The family they'd longed for wasn't something they'd lost. It was something they were building right here, right now. They moved to a nearby bench under a canopy of cherry blossoms, their petals drifting down like fragile snowflakes. Lily curled up against Olivia, her tiny hand still clutching the edge of Olivia's jacket. Ethan watched them quietly, his heart so full he thought it might burst. He finally spoke, voice low and filled with aching honesty. "All these years, I told myself I'd ruined everything, that I was better off alone than risking hurting someone I loved. But today, watching you save her, I realize I don't want to be alone anymore." Olivia's breath hitched, tears threatening to fall again. She remembered every night she'd stared at the city skyline, wondering what might have been if she'd chosen love instead of ambition. The storm inside her began to calm, replaced by a dawning understanding she hadn't failed by chasing her dreams. But she'd been wrong to believe love and ambition couldn't coexist. This was the lesson so many learned too late, that success without connection is an empty prize. She took Ethan's hand in hers, squeezing it as she found the courage to speak. "I spent years convincing myself you'd forgotten me, that it was easier to stay angry than to admit I missed you every day. But Lily deserves both of us, and maybe we deserve each other too." Her words hung between them, fragile and powerful, like the first rays of light after a long, sleepless night. Ethan leaned closer, his forehead pressing gently against hers. "I never stopped loving you, Olivia," he whispered, the words trembling with truth. "Not for a single day." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks as she let herself believe him. She wrapped her free arm around Lily, drawing Ethan into the embrace, until the three of them sat there cocooned in a moment that felt more real than anything Olivia had ever known. A gust of wind rustled the cherry blossoms, their petals swirling around them like confetti, celebrating a fragile, precious victory. Nearby, a busker played a soft tune on his violin, the music lilting through the park and weaving itself into the memory being etched into all their hearts. Olivia looked up into Ethan's eyes, seeing not the boy who had run from their love, but the man who had fought to survive to raise a child, and who was now brave enough to stand beside her. In that moment, Olivia realized that crises have a way of stripping life down to what matters most. They force us to see who we are when everything else falls away. For anyone watching their story unfold, the lesson was clear. Don't wait for tragedy to show you where your heart belongs. Don't wait for the storm to remind you who you love and who loves you back. As the sun began to break through the clouds overhead, spilling golden light across the park, Olivia felt a fragile peace settling into her bones. She knew they still had a long road ahead. There would be questions to answer, wounds to heal, and fears to overcome. But for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the path forward, and with Ethan by her side and Lily's small hand in hers, she dared to hope it might lead them somewhere beautiful. Weeks passed in a blur of quiet mornings, and evenings spent learning how to exist together without letting old fears pull them apart. Olivia found herself waking up each day with a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in years. She would catch Ethan in the kitchen, humming softly as he packed Lily's lunch, or see Lily and Ethan curled up on the couch reading bedtime stories, their laughter drifting through the apartment like the sweetest music. These moments felt fragile, yet powerful, a testament to the fact that love isn't always loud or sweeping. It's found in the gentle, steady choice to stay. One rainy evening, Olivia arrived home late from a board meeting to find Ethan and Lily asleep on the living room floor, surrounded by crayon drawings and stuffed animals. The sight stopped her in her tracks. She realized with a jolt that this simple, messy scene was everything she'd spent years searching for, but never found in conference rooms or luxury hotels. She slipped off her shoes and lowered herself beside them, pressing a soft kiss to Lily's forehead and brushing a hand through Ethan's hair. He stirred awake, his eyes finding hers in the dim light. "Long day," he whispered, his voice raspy with sleep. She nodded, a tired smile spreading across her face. "The longest," she admitted. "But coming home to this, it makes it worth it." Olivia looked around at the scattered crayons and giggling stuffed bunny, and for the first time she felt the word home wrap itself around her heart like a warm blanket. A few days later, Lily came running into the room holding a flyer from school. "There's a spring celebration. Will you both come?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. Olivia glanced at Ethan, who nodded with a quiet certainty that spoke volumes. The day of the celebration, they arrived together, Olivia holding Lily's hand tightly, while Ethan carried a bouquet of daisies. They sat side by side in the folding chairs as Lily and her classmates sang a sweet off-key version of "You Are My Sunshine." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes as she realized she was witnessing a moment she might have missed forever, if she hadn't been brave enough to let love back into her life. After the performance, as parents milled around praising the children, Olivia overheard whispers about her and Ethan. Some commented on their reunion, others questioned the wisdom of giving someone a second chance. The words stung, but instead of shrinking away, Olivia reached for Ethan's hand. "People will always have something to say," she murmured. "But what matters is what we know in our hearts." He squeezed her hand in return, his eyes shining with gratitude and a fierce kind of love. That night, Olivia found herself sitting across from Ethan at the kitchen table, the quiet hum of the city drifting through the open window. The soft glow of a single lamp bathed them in warm light as they talked about the future, about Lily's schooling, their careers, the dreams they once thought they'd left behind. Olivia admitted her fear that she might never fully earn back the trust they'd lost. Ethan shared his own doubts about whether he could truly provide the stability they both craved. But every word was met with understanding instead of blame, with patience instead of anger. They decided together to move slowly, no grand gestures, no promises made in haste. Instead, they would build a life one small, intentional choice at a time. Olivia knew there would be moments of doubt and days when old scars ached, but she also knew that the choice to love over and over was what made relationships worth fighting for. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, they took Lily to the pier, the three of them sharing a quiet breakfast as sea lions barked in the distance. Olivia watched Ethan help Lily feed the gulls, his hand steady on hers, and felt tears prick her eyes once more. Not from sadness, but from the beauty of seeing something once broken becoming whole again. It was in that simple moment, with the salty breeze on her face and the sound of her daughter's laughter filling the air, that Olivia understood a truth she wanted everyone listening to. Remember, love isn't just something we fall into. It's something we choose every single day. For anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late, if the mistakes of the past are too big to overcome, Olivia and Ethan's story is a reminder that healing is possible. It may not come quickly or easily, but with honesty, patience, and the courage to keep showing up, even when it's hard, redemption can be found. And sometimes the most extraordinary new beginnings come from the places where we thought everything was lost. Olivia and Ethan's journey was never simple. It was a winding path marked by missed chances, painful misunderstandings, and years lost to fear and pride. Yet in the end, it was also a story of rediscovery, courage, and the quiet power of choosing love again. Olivia, a woman who once believed success meant sacrificing connection, found herself face to face with the child she never knew existed, and with the man she had never stopped loving. Ethan, a father who had spent years convinced he wasn't good enough, discovered the strength to open his heart once more. Together they faced obstacles and doubts, but each challenge peeled away layers of old pain and allowed them to see each other with fresh eyes. Their story unfolded in San Francisco's bustling streets, cozy cafes, and quiet parks, where every conversation, every tear, and every small act of kindness rebuilt the bridge they thought had crumbled forever. From the first shocking encounter with Lily, helping Olivia collect her scattered papers, to the heart-stopping moment when Olivia saved Lily in Golden Gate Park, to the tender nights spent sharing fears and hopes, their lives slowly knit together into something stronger and more beautiful than either of them imagined possible. By the time they stood hand in hand watching the sunrise with Lily laughing beside them, Olivia and Ethan had proven that while time can wound, it can also heal if we let it. The moral lesson of this story is one of compassion, patience, and the transformative power of forgiveness. It reminds us that no one is perfect, and that the mistakes we make don't have to define our futures. When we allow ourselves to listen, to seek understanding instead of blame, and to open our hearts even after they've been broken, we create space for healing, not just for ourselves, but for those we love. In our own lives today, we can apply this by reaching out to those we've drifted from, by having the courage to start difficult conversations, and by recognizing that sometimes it's the second chance that teaches us what love truly means. Thank you so much for watching and spending your precious time with this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more heartfelt tales that inspire and move you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and gives us the motivation to keep creating stories that touch your heart. Until next time, take care, and remember, it's never too late to choose love.